The Manchester Hole Tragedy. In November 2005, 14-year-old Joseph Lister, along with 10 classmates, including his friends Charlie and Amy from his school, his math teacher, and a 17-year-old caver volunteer who knew the cave system well, decided to explore the Nidderdale Caves in North Yorkshire, England. The cave system is famous for its 20 entrances, and the group chose to enter through Manchester Hole, a small opening in the ground that leads to a huge cave. They descended through a hole into a massive chamber, about the size of a football field, with a few inches of water on the floor and a 50-foot-high ceiling hung with stalactites. After passing through, they entered a tunnel and climbed down a muddy path into a second, smaller chamber that still held all 11 students and had shallow water. The tunnel then narrowed sharply, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees for 40 feet through twisting passages. At the bottom, a muddy stream soaked their clothes, but led to a small chamber where they could stand again. The math teacher was the last to follow the group. When he reached the small chamber, the guide became very worried because the water level was much higher than usual, something he had never seen before. Even though it was cold and windy outside, there was no forecast of rain. Everyone was standing in freezing water. Their boots were filled with water, and there was hardly any space to move. To make matters worse, the water kept rising, soon reaching above the knees of some students. The guide, confused by the sudden flooding, knew they had to get out quickly, so they decided to retreat. The math teacher went first, followed by the students, one by one, taking the small passage back to the previous chamber. At one point, the teacher and 9 of the students were inside the tunnel when a sudden surge of cold water flooded the chamber. The guide, along with Amy and Joseph, were the last to exit the chamber and enter the tunnel. The tunnel was crowded with students struggling against the rising water. Realizing the danger, the guide, Amy, and Joseph went back to the previous chamber to catch their breath, but the water kept rising and they were nearly submerged. Taking a deep breath, they re-entered the tunnel. This time, the tunnel was clear enough for them to move. The guide led the way, with Amy and Joseph following closely. However, in the previous chamber, the guide pushed Amy out to safety, but Joseph never made it out. The water continued to rise, even in the chamber. The guide tried to go back for Joseph, but the math teacher insisted on taking the other 10 students to safety. Tragically, Joseph drowned in the narrow tunnel, where there was no air. After the incident, the group went to the surface to alert emergency personnel, and they emerged under a blue sky with strong winds but not a single drop of rain. It was later revealed that strong winds had blown water out of the nearby Scar House Reservoir that day. Thousands of gallons of water were forced into the river below, causing it to rise 4 feet in just 1 hour. This surge of water drained directly into the cave system. Normally, water slowly trickles through and seeps into the groundwater, but that day the huge volume overwhelmed the cave's ability to drain, triggering flash flooding throughout the system in just a few minutes. Cave rescuers arrived within 20 minutes after being called. By then, the water had already receded to below their knees. They found the lifeless body of Joseph Lister in the narrow tunnel before the final chamber.